Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over New 52 Superman. And right now we are covering the truth era of Superman comics. And what I mean by that, see, at the tail end of the New 52 Superman, he was powerless. You see, he gained a new ability known as the solar flare. And with the solar flare, he will release a huge amount of energy. And with that huge amount of energy, he would be completely drained. His cells would be drained. And so he had to recharge like he is a solar battery. But once he does recharge, he's back to his old Superman ways. Except the problem was, the last time he did a solar flare, something happened to him. Something changed in him, where technically he's now more powerless than he ever has been in the past. And his powers are not coming back like they should. He does have some of his powers, but not all of them. And so this is more of a weaker state Superman still trying to be a hero. But when it came to the New 52, he had a whole bunch of different titles going on at the same time. You had Superman, you had Action Comics, you had Batman and Superman, and you also had Superman and Wonder Woman. And all four different books kind of dealt with the idea of him being powerless in different kinds of ways. Now, today's video, we're gonna focus on Superman and Wonder Woman, because we cannot forget, in the New 52, these two characters, they were dating. They were the power couple in the New 52 era of DC Comics. And the question is right now, how is Diana handling the idea that her boyfriend, Superman, is not the man he used to be? He's now more powerless here it has been in the past. And now it's up to her to kind of help protect him, but at the same time making sure that he is okay mentally. And so when it comes to the opening pages of today's storyline, we pick up with Superman and Wonder Woman being in bed together. And really, it's her kind of having these different flashbacks of the different things they had to go through as a power couple. But at the same time telling us that when they first met, it was just two different people from two different worlds who were just friends. But later on, they fell in love with one another and formed the power couple we know we have here in the New 52. Either way, you do have her kind of realize that she now has to take care of the man who used to be unbreakable. He was unbeatable. He was so powerful, and now he's not as powerful as he used to be. And so it's her saying that no matter what, she'll still be there for him. Yes, he has changed, but she did not fall in love with the idea of his powers. She fell in love with the person he is. And honestly, that right there is not that bad. It really shows that she really cares for Clark Kent. Either way, that is when his phone begins to ring. Now, most times, any girlfriend, if your phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, if another girl's calling you, of course, she might have some questions. But for Diana, she's all like, listen, I know you have all these different kind of female friends, so I'm not going to trip. And matter of fact, I'm going to lay here and just let you answer the phone. Now, when Clark does answer the phone, it is Lana Lang. Now, let's not forget, Lana Lang is Clark Kent's first crush. But at the same time, she was the first person outside the Kents to find out that Superman had powers. And so because of that, these two characters have a very close bond. But when she does call up Clark, she's calling for help. Somebody had broke into her parents' house when her and her boyfriend John Henry were just stopping by. But something happened to John, and now they're coming after her, and she's asking for Clark's help. Unfortunately though, the call ends, and so Clark and Diana have no choice but to head over to Smallville. Now, Diana has to carry Clark because, like I said earlier, this is a depowered Superman. Not completely, but mostly. And so right now, Homeboy cannot fly. Also, he cannot run as fast as he used to. And so it's up to Diana to carry her man over to his hometown, Smallville. And once you have Clark and Diana arrive at the home of Lana Lang parents, you have Clark and Diana begin to freak out for a very good reason, because when they do arrive, they cannot find any clues to tell them what happened to Lana Lang nor John Henry. On top of that, the house is so clean, it looks like nobody has ever been there in a very long time. Now, for Clark Kent, he begins to freak out for a very good reason, because he still blames himself for the death of Lana Lang's parents. See, they died back in the Superman Doom event when Brainiac had attacked the Earth, especially Smallville, and they died. And so ever since then, he blamed himself for their death. And so with Lana missing, is him saying, I have failed her again. I cannot protect the one person I care for a lot. Now, this is where you have Diana figure out that when it comes to Lana, she was Clark's first crush, but also the first person to find out about the powers of Clark Kent. But she helped Clark control his powers. And so it's Diana realizing how special Lana is to Clark. And so you have Diana say, I'm going to stay with you and keep helping you to find Lana Lang. And so you have the two characters go in town to see if anybody saw anything and also find any other clues to help them find Lana and John. Now you do have Diana and Clark go into Smallville undercover, because we have to remember, at this point in the New 52, the entire world knows that Clark Kent is Superman thanks to Lois Lane. She felt like she was helping Clark out by telling the world that he was Superman, but at the same time, the only thing she did is put his life in danger, but everyone around him as well. It's really a dumb idea. Either way, when it comes to Clark and Diana, when they arrive in town, they try to act like some random two people who just arrived in the city. Except the problem is, Smallville is a small town. Everybody knows Clark, no matter what he looks like. And so when you have Clark over to two guys who may know what happened to Lana, they call him out saying, dude, Clark, stop. We know it's you. Stop trying to be Mr. Undercover. Just go ahead and reveal yourself. And you have Clark say, fine, okay. Either way, you have the two guys tell Clark they have no idea what happened to Lana nor John. But at the same time, they tell Clark, listen, this city is not mad at you at all with the whole idea that you are Superman. And matter of fact, we still believe that you are a great person, that you are somebody that will do the right thing no matter what. And also, we kind of understand why you had a secret identity. But at the same time, we have no idea what happened to Lana nor John. But then you have this old man hand Clark his family's old mailbox, saying that he found it in the middle of the road. And that is very confusing. Why was his family old mailbox left in the middle of the road somewhere else completely different in Smallville? And so you have Clark and Diana go over to where the Kent's farm used to be at. Now we have to remember, in the New 52, one of the biggest change in the New 52 was Clark's parents both being dead. So technically at this point in time, Clark's parents are dead and long gone. The farm was just left there for him to go back to every once in a while. Except when he goes back this time, the entire house has been technically taken. It's completely gone. The barn as well, which means that somebody is doing this as a way to get to Clark. With Lana, with John, and now his entire family house being gone, the question is, who is doing this? Now, you also see other farm places have also been taken as well, the neighboring farms to the Kents. And the question is, are they also being involved in Clark Kent's mess right now? Now, you have Clark being able to find the old bunker that belonged to his grandfather. And with that old bunker, it's just Clark telling us that when he first discovered his powers, he was able to find his old bunker and he would just hide there until he was able to get his powers back in control. Now, with that being said, with the farm being taken away completely, Clark wonders what happened to his family graves, and so he goes over to Smallville Cemetery. And when he arrives to his parents' graves, their coffins have also been taken as well. And he's left to wonder who in the world is going around taking different things that belongs to Clark Kent's life. Why are they doing this for? But that is when you have Clark and Diana turn around, and when they do, they are confronted by the Suicide Squad. Now, with the Suicide Squad being here, now we're left to wonder, is Amanda Waller involved in some kind of way with the disappearance of Lana Lang and John Henry, but also the farm that used to belong to the Kents. And why in the world is she coming after Clark Kent for? Either way, we're about to have a Superman Wonder Woman fight against the Suicide Squad. But then we jump into the second chapter of the storyline, where we pick up with Superman and Wonder Woman working together to fight against the Suicide Squad. Now, like I said earlier, Superman has been depowered, yes, but not to the point where he's basically weak. He still has some powers, it's just that he's not as strong as he used to be. And so when it comes to this battle, it's actually a challenge for him, because honestly, if Clark was at full power again, he would take out the Suicide Squad very easily, except right now he is not. And so they are very strong opponents for him and Diana. And matter of fact, this fight does go on for a few pages, but it leaves you wondering, how is Amanda Waller involved in this mess? Why is the Suicide Squad here for? Either way, you do have our two heroes being able to actually defeat the Suicide Squad. But here comes the next problem, because right after they do that, well, you did have the book tell us that Clark is seriously injured. Not to the point where he could die, but of course, again, with him being depowered to a lower state, his body is not as durable as it used to be. And so some of the bullets that Deadshot used did a number on Clark. And so they had to go back to his old grandfather's bunker to hide out there so that he's able to somewhat recover. Now, once you do have our heroes leave, that is the moment we kind of find out that Amanda Waller is technically not involved in this mess like you thought she would be. That apparently she was forced to send in the Suicide Squad by somebody else. But once they have lost, this guy hangs up the call on Amanda Waller and then says, "Protocol secure." And now we're left to wonder, what does that mean? And who is this new random character? Either way, you have Diana and Clark go back over to the bunker that belongs to his grandfather. But once they get back to the bunker, this is where you have the book show how worried Diana is. And what I mean by that, Diana is saying that if Deadshot has some kind of bullets that were able to hurt Clark, that means that sooner or later, different kinds of enemies, different kinds of governments are going to continue to make different kinds of weapons as a way to use on Clark Kent to hopefully kill him off. And Deadshot is just the first example. And so she's trying her best to tell Clark, you need to take it slow, because right now you're trying to be a hero still, but we have no idea what's wrong with your powers. And until we know what's wrong with your powers and how strong you are, you should slow down until you're able to properly heal after every single battle. Because you have to realize, you've never been in this state before, where you've been this powerless and you still had to fight and taking the hits you have been taking, which of course does damage to your body. But for Clark Kent, he's more of, no, I have to keep fighting. I have to find Lana Lang. I have to find John Henry. But then you have Clark realize where he has to go. And once he realized that, he tells Diana, please do not follow me. Matter of fact, stay here while I go and handle this problem on my own. And we're left to wonder, okay, where is Clark going? Because just like that, he realized where he has to go to figure out what happened to Lana Lang, what happened to John Henry, and why in the world was the Suicide Squad coming after him for. And so you have Clark Kent go over to the White House. And when he does go over to the White House, you know what that means. You know who he is trying to see, because he realized who could most likely be behind the actual attack. And that's when he says, hey, I came here to talk to the president. And so as we jump into the third chapter of the storyline, we pick up with Steve Trevor instead of the president, because they knew that Clark was coming here and so they had the president move somewhere else very secure. Either way, when it comes to Clark Kent, well, now he has a chance to talk to Steve Trevor. Now, at this point in DC Comics, Steve was working for Argus. Argus is one of the many different government agencies out there in DC Comics. Either way, when it came to Argus and Steve Trevor, they felt like they had the right to make a move on Clark Kent. And what I mean by that, ever since the entire world found out that Clark was Superman, well, the government felt like Clark lied to them. And what I mean by that, they felt like Clark was Superman day and night, that his day job and night job was being Superman. But when the world found out that he was Clark Kent, they're like, why do you have a secret identity for? Why were you hiding your secret life for? What were you planning? They felt like he could have had some kind of secret plan to overthrow the government. Now, we already know that is not true for Clark Kent. The reason why he had this secret life was to get away from the superhero world every once in a while. But for Steve Trevor and Argus, they don't believe that at all. We also kind of find out that Lana Lang and John Henry were not the only two people who were kidnapped. We kind of find out Lois Lane, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Clark's old teacher, other people who are friends with Clark have all been kidnapped. Now, the reason why, because it's technically Argus saying if Clark had lied about his life as Superman, then what if the people around him also lied to cover up his tracks? And that means they could also be trying to help him overthrow the government as well. But again, we all know that is not true. But for Argus and Steve Trevor, they believe that hardcore. And so while you have our two characters discussing the idea that Clark lied to the American government, well, we kind of find out at the other base where the people who are close to Clark are being held at, well, they're currently being saved by Wonder Woman. And that is a great thing. But here's the big question though. How did she know where to go? Because if that's the case, why did she not tell Clark where to go to find his loved ones? And so while you have her trying to break them out, you have Clark and Steve talk to one another about the idea that the reason why Clark lied to the world. And again, we already know why. Because he wanted a life away from the superhero world. But Steve cannot fully understand that. As a matter of fact, to Steve, he believes if you are going to be a hero, you should not have a secret life. Because why do you need one? What are you hiding? You are a hero to the world. And so for Clark, it's kind of like, that's your problem. Because you're not out there all the time fighting against different things and not realizing that sometimes us heroes need a break from that life. Either way, while you have the two characters talking to one another, that is when you have the actual president walk in. And I want to say this is Obama. He looks just like him. And so when it comes to Obama, you have him say, hey, listen, Clark, let me explain to you why we did what we did. Because let's look in the past. We had many different things pop off left and right. Doomsday, Brainiac twice, Hell, the Crime Syndicate. 4 different things popped off left and right, all because of you. And there are many, many more things because of you. And so with those things being said, the reason why we did what we did, because at first, even though those things happen, you still protect the world. But then you lie. And that one lie, it grows into folks' mind and begin to wonder what other things you lied about. Like, for example, did you really take down Brainiac? Are you and him working together on a bigger plan to come down the road? What about Doomsday? Is he really dead, or did you let him live and he's hiding somewhere out in the world right now? You see what we're saying? That one lie you told to the entire world about who you are, that lie grew. It made folks wonder what other things you are lying about. And that is a very huge statement to make. Now, the ending of the 3rd chapter is really more of Clark Kent fighting against Parasite. Now, the reason why he's fighting against Parasite, because apparently somebody on the security detail for the president felt like Clark could hurt the president. so they release Parasite as a way to fight against Clark. And honestly, the fight does not last that long. And the reason why, because Parasite realized that he is not able to get the same energy he used to get off Clark when Clark was Superman completely. And so the fight does get wrapped up very quickly. Now, the person who did release Parasite is going to be important at the end of the 4th chapter. But while you had Clark fighting against Parasite, well, we saw Diana break out every single person that was kidnapped by Argus. But then she begins to interview every single one of them. And the reason why? To prove that each and every single one of them is innocent. They had no idea that Clark was Superman. Well, some did, but not all of them. But at the same time, they weren't trying to overthrow the government. And that is a huge problem. You'll see why here in a moment. But you then have Steve Trevor tell Clark where to go to find his loved ones. And so he heads that way right now. But as the 3rd chapter closed, the last person to be interviewed is Lois Lane. And this is actually very huge because she was the person who told the entire world that Clark Kent was Superman. But that is when we pick up with a new character known as Mr. Bend. Now, we are going to learn more about this character down the road. But when it comes to Mr. Bend, we do know that he does work for the president. We have no idea in what way. But when it comes to Mr. Bend, he is the same guy we saw earlier that was talking to Amanda Waller. Except this time, he's now watching Firestorm, another hero, where you have Firestorm trying to help a bunch of people who are trapped on a boat at the moment. And so you have Firestorm trying to use his powers to help those folks off the boat that are trapped in the middle of the ocean. Except when he does try, those people begin to turn into some kind of shadow creatures and they try to attack him. And he's left to wonder what in the world is going on. Now he is grabbed and taken hostage. But the question is though, by what? By who? Now we saw these shadow creatures before over in Action Comics, where it came to Clark fighting against Wraith, a new character who was able to control those kind of creatures. And so now we're seeing them in this book as well. Either way, you have Firestorm get taken away and now he's a hostage by these creatures. But getting back over to Diana, we do see her getting ready to interview Lois Lane. Now, this is very huge because the reason why you have Diana interviewing every single person right now who was kidnapped because they know Clark in some kind of way, she's trying to prove that they have no idea what's going on with Clark Kent's life, but they're not trying to overthrow the government. And so the last person is Lois Lane. And the reason why it's so huge because let's not forget, before we had the New 52, it was Clark and Lois Lane. But then DC said no more Clark and Lois Lane, let's try Clark and Diana. And that was literally most of the New 52. Now, with that being said, even when we had Clark and Diana, you have fans still hope that Lois and Clark would get together. And a lot of stories show that the two of them might have some kind of feelings for each other. And so this is Diana trying to help Lois, but at the same time try to see why did Lois did what she did, which was tell the entire world that Clark was Superman, but also trying to see if Lois might have feelings for Clark. Now, of course, you see that Lois says no to all 3 questions. Even with the lasso of truth, she still says no to all 3 questions, which also proves like her and Perry White and the others are all innocent. They're not trying to overthrow the government at all. But then we see Clark arrive. And when Clark arrives, he sees Diana there. And he's wondering why in the world is Diana here for? Because how in the world did she know where to go? Because this looks bad on Diana. It does seem like that maybe she did know the entire time where everybody was being taken to. And you have Diana say, no, that is not true. What happened was after Clark left, Steve Trevor called her up. and told her where to go and what he wanted her to do, because both Steve and Diana realized that when it comes to Clark, he would not be down with the idea of using the lasso of truth on his loved ones. And so when it came to Diana, she's all like, okay, Steve told me what they're being held at and also wants to prove that they are innocent. But the best way to do that is to use the lasso of truth. And so Diana did. Now you have Clark wonder, why in the world did you not tell me? And again, all because of the lasso of truth. Diana and Steve knew that Clark would not be down with the idea of using the lasso of truth. But either way, it still looks bad on Diana, because kind of like, so technically and secretly, you were working with Steve Trevor right after I left. And you knew you could have stopped me and tried to talk to me and we could have worked something out. Either way, you have Clark just walk away and break out the rest of the people who also have been kidnapped by Argus. And this leads into Clark and Diana going to find the rest of the people who were taken away. But once they do that, well, they kind of find out that this is also a prison, because you also have some random bad guys being held here as well. And some random people, we have no idea who they are, also being held here as well. But every single person being held here and then put on stasis. Except right when you have Steel say that, we kind of find out the people who've been put in stasis are now being brought out of stasis. These different kind of bad guys. And then they're released to fight against Superman. And so it's up to Clark, Steel, and also Diana to fight against these people, but at the same time protect the other people who are not power beings, like Lana, Lois, Jimmy, Perry, and the list goes on. Now, after a few pages, you do have our heroes being able to handle those criminals, but right after that, it leads into a huge conversation between Clark, Lois, and Diana. When it comes to the conversation, it's really more of Clark saying that Diana and Lois both betrayed his trust. Now for Lois, we can kind of understand what he's saying there, because she did tell the entire world his secret, and she had no right to do that. But when it comes to Diana, well, she honestly did not do anything at all. I mean, yes, she did lie to him or did not tell him that, hey, Steve called me, I know where to go. But at the same time, she also used the lasso of truth. Now, real quick, let me explain why Clark felt like the lasso of truth was a problem. Because even though you had everybody agree to use the lasso of truth to prove that they were innocent, at the same time, they had no choice. Yes, they agreed, but at the same time, what could they do? They can't say no, they can't say yes. They had to say yes, sorry, but they couldn't say no, because if they did, they'll be locked up again in this prison cell until Clark saves them. And so they had no choice but to say yes, and they did. And so that right there bothered Clark a lot. And so you had Clark say, I have to go somewhere else away from both you and Lois, because right now, the two folks I believed in the most, I trusted the most, have betrayed my trust. And now I'm going somewhere else away from you guys. And he leaves just like that. But to wrap up today's video, we actually do pick up with Mr. Bend once again. Now, this is where he becomes very important for the storyline, because we kind of find out Mr. Ben was the guy who was on the security detail for the president that had released Parasite. And because he did that without permission, he does get fired by the president. And so with him getting fired, you would think he'll be angry, but he's not. Matter of fact, he's very happy. But then we see him meet up with two other characters. One character does look like Vandal Savage, not confirmed, but the other character is Wraith, and we saw her over in Action Comics, the one where she basically attacked Metropolis, and she was the new mayor of Metropolis. But now we know that her and Mr. Ben and Vandal Savage are planning something big against Superman, and the question is, what? But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.